And then so members of the church came, and then this is there. I have both of these stories in the show notes. My favorite thing is, so one of the Diamondbacks announcers sees this crowd, and he's like, "Hey, what a cool shirt!" This kid has a T-shirt that says, "I can't do that. I'm a Mormon," something like that, right?
Okay. Okay. Uh-huh.
I'm not allowed to do that. I'm a Mormon. But the announcer sees his shirt and thinks it says, "I'm a moron." And so he's like, "Hey, I love this shirt. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm a moron." Oh, how clever.
Mornings are better with a warm beverage, even for Latter-day Saints. Meet Postum, the ideal coffee alternative and proud sponsor of This Week in Mormons podcast. Spotted on the coffee aisle at Smith's Grocery or at your local nearby store. Can't locate it? No worries. Order it at postum.com. Explore delicious recipes to tailor your Postum experience. Start your day off right with Postum.
Hello, listener.
Oh my.
Welcome to This Week in Mormons. It's your favorite hosts, Matt and Melissa.
Hello, Matthew.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Hey, did you know that's trademarked? You can't actually say that.
Oh, let's get ready to tumble.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
I can't remember. Oh, I was at BYU Idaho had their graduation recently.
Uh-huh.
And they just pull somebody from the department or whatever to read the names as people walk across the stage and grab their fake diploma thing.
Right.
And as I was listening to my friend read these names, they'd just be so bland, right? They'd be like, Joseph F. Smith, political science. And I was like, I hope someday they call me because I'll be, ladies and gentlemen, Joseph F. Smith.
Oh, I've always felt that way too, Matt, because we do the same thing at our high school graduation. And I'm like, does it have to be so bland? I mean, I know it's formal and serious or whatever, but why can't it be like you're announcing wrestlers at a wrestling match?
That'd be so fun.
Right? This is a big deal.
Especially because we tell the parents you're not allowed to clap until the very end.
Right.
So let's let them feel like they're clapping when their child's name is read.
Yeah.
Hey, well, listener, we're glad to have you with us this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a lot of really fun stories to talk about, but we're going to begin with the mailbag.
Okay, I'll start our mailbag. We got a really great and thoughtful email from Holly. This is in regards to what we talked about on Twin Takes last month about a sacrament meeting policy by one ward, at least that we know of, that said we're not going to administer the sacrament outside of the chapel, which is considered an ordinance room. The sacrament is an ordinance, so we'll no longer be bringing the sacrament out to the foyer to give it to people out there. And we had a little bit of a discussion about it. And I actually heard back from quite a few listeners, but I wanted to really emphasize what Holly wrote because it was so thoughtful. So she said, I struggled this month to listen to your coverage of one ward who decided that the sacrament was an ordinance that should be contained in an ordinance room. I feel that sometimes as a church, we try to place the standards of temple worship onto the standards of congregational worship on Sundays. But to me, the sacrament ordinance is for all those who are trying at all levels to follow Christ, even the outcasts in the foyer. Don't you think that's a good perspective?
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. Then she gave some examples of like people who would struggle with a policy like this, like parents of young children, single parents, if your husband has to sit on the stand, even people who have physical or other disabilities. And Holly's son is autistic. I'm going to go back to her letter and tell you something else she said. She said, my youngest son was severely autistic, developmentally delayed, and mostly incapable of being still and quiet. The foyer of the chapel would be my sacred place where the ordinance of the sacrament was given to me with love and understanding while I sat with my son to keep from disrupting the meeting. For the last year or so, due to increasingly difficult behaviors, I have had an aide come to my house on Sundays and sit with my son while I go to church and sit quietly in the chapel for the sacrament. This week, the aide was out of town, so I had to tag team with another family member, giving each of us a chance to take the sacrament, albeit in two different wards. I made it to the other ward's meeting just as the sacrament hymn was ending and found myself once again in the foyer, trusting that God understood I was doing the best I could to be present and partake of the sacrament, even if it wasn't done perfectly. And I was grateful for the opportunity to be there.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but my wife and I for 10 years did foster care for adults with developmental disabilities.
Right.
And the whole church thing could be a challenge, and we would get respite oftentimes to do it. But yeah, and I think when we were talking about it before, I mentioned this the kid in my ward whose family sits in another room for the
Yeah. Yeah.
sacrament meeting. Also, I think people leave this out. I know it's going to sound facetious, but the teenagers that hang out in the foyer, like, I understand that we say, no, no, we should try and teach teenagers to come in, even if they're not teenagers, right? There's just the people that like hanging out in the foyer.
Yeah.
And we say we should encourage them to be in the chapel. But I'm all in favor of saying to people, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're at church. You're here for the sacrament. We'll bring it to you wherever you are.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like, local leaders have inspiration over their wards, right? And so I would imagine that if Holly was in this ward, I would hope that the bishop would reach out to Holly and say, let's figure out how we can make this work, because there's this one thing we feel inspired to try and accomplish in our ward. But at the same time, I don't want you to feel like left out or something.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I don't want to get after local leaders who are just trying their best. I think what this illustrates, though, is an overarching thing where sometimes we're trying so hard to teach a concept that we forget that ultimately supposed to love each other, right? And that we're supposed to, in the sacrament, provide access to people feeling the love of the Savior, but also, I mean, they need access to that ordinance, obviously, but
Yeah.
overall, it's supposed to be about accessing the love of the Savior. We've had a couple of instances in our stake recently where my husband and another counselor in the bishopric, they both have beards, and
Oh.
we just got a new stake presidency, and one of the members of the stake presidency keeps talking to them about their beards,
Oh.
and he does other things that are very, I would say, like super conservative traditional, right?
Mm-hmm.
That to me are not necessarily the gospel, they're just more culture. But
Mm-hmm.
he very much believes in them and he keeps pointing them out. And he does things like gets after people for not properly respecting him while he's on the stand, like
Oh.
and he won't make announcements. He won't make announcements in sacrament meeting because it deters from the spirit of the sacrament. So, like, he's
Wow.
just very, very traditional, and that's fine. But at the same time, like, we kind of have this like rubbing against us feeling where it's like, hey, do you want us to be here? Because like I'm just thinking about these two men who the amount of time and effort that they put into loving and serving the people in our ward as members of the bishopric, and the amount of thought and consideration that they're putting in things to just like, I mean, multiple times a Sunday be, made fun of or told that it's inappropriate to have a beard. It's like, are
Yeah.
we focusing on the wrong thing? Like, are
Yeah.
we trying to teach a principle when that's not really what we're supposed to be coming to church for, I guess?
Do you remember the interview we did with Tim Stewart? And he said being a counselor in a stake presidency is like being John in the temple video, where he just basically shows up and say, yep, I'm here. I agree.
That's
But
funny. Yeah.
sometimes we need to remind counselors in stake presidencies, like, you're here. We're happy you're here. Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah.
But anyways,
I don't
Holly,
know.
thanks so much for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we needed that
Okay.
perspective.
There was one other thing I was going to say about that. I like her idea where she says there's different levels of things. Because have you
Mm,
ever cleaned the temple?
yeah,
Yeah, and you go and at least my experience in cleaning the temple is you go in and you clean a room and it feels like you haven't done anything in that room because it's already super, super clean.
uh-huh,
And
okay.
someone explained to me that there's different levels of cleanliness. Because when I go and clean the church building, it's definitely
It's
not that way.
dirty.
Yeah, even when I'm done, I'm like, wow, I wish I could scrub this a little bit better than what it. And so I think that there's space to be like, in the church, there's different buildings for different ordinances, and the temple has a different level of cleanliness and a different level of worthiness and an
Mm,
expectation of attitudes and behaviors at the temple than what we
yeah,
would have at a meeting house. And sacrament meeting has a different thing than if you're there for young men's and young women's or for like playing basketball or something like that. So I think Holly makes a good point there that we should recognize that not all ordinances have exactly the same situation around them and the exact same like expectations of people.
yeah, yeah, true. Cool.
Okay. So I don't know if you were listening to the podcast recently, Melissa, but Tiff has been
Always.
throwing some shade our way about inaccuracy.
Matt,
A little
throwing
bit.
shade, throwing shade.
I
Okay.
don't. I'm trying to talk the way the kids talk these days, and
Oh, I see.
I have
Uh-huh.
it on good authority that there have been some email comments suggesting that Tiff should not be so mean to us, but Tiff didn't read those emails on air. So I'm just gonna say, Tiff, we love the shade, we like it, doesn't bother us, but you got to read the emails that are nice to us.
Oh, Matt. Listen, Tiff was not throwing shade. Tiff believes in accuracy, and she was just correcting the record.
Oh, I see. You know,
But but us, like we love it.
yeah. When I used to work in banking, they had a position called the accuracy advocate. It was that was a literal job
Oh.
a person had. Yeah.
Oh.
And actually my wife had that job at a branch for a while. And
Mhm.
I would, I was a little, let's say, willy-nilly with paperwork, and I
Mhm.
didn't do
Mhm.
things the right way. And the accuracy advocate would always be on my case, like, hey,
I hear
you got to
you.
do this better. So it's a phrase in our house where Sandra will correct me and I'll be like, oh, you're the accuracy
Accuracy
advocate.
advocate. I
Yeah.
think that's a good perspective. Like, for example, we know that Tiffany is a lawyer. Okay. So
Yeah.
she probably spends her days reading like very scholarly and intense information. Whereas I am a high school librarian and I spend my days reading fantasy fiction, right? I think that's a perfect description in the difference between the way we address things. Don't you think?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
listeners at Susan Holder 3944 said, "You might not be accurate, but you are entertaining." And
Yes,
I mean, that's what we're
Susan.
going for.
That's what we are. Inaccurately entertaining.
I mean, we're like 95% accurate. We're
Sure.
pretty at, yeah.
As far as we know. We're
Yeah.
happy to correct the record when we're wrong.
By
Sure.
the way, that statistic might not be accurate. And then another listener at Red Rock 5939 says, I have a brother that needs to watch the two of you. Why? You can disagree and sound like you are agreeing. The two of us sound like we are disagreeing, even when we are agreeing. Yes.
Yes.
This is what I would call my gift in life, that I
It's true.
disagree. I disagree with people without them knowing.
Agreeably. Agreeably disagree.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I love that. I love that comment. Thank you. And yeah, here's the thing. Sometimes Matt and I don't agree. Sometimes we do, but we feel I don't know, it's entertaining to us to take two sides of an issue, regardless of if that's what we actually think or not. But it's good for us to represent all sides of a story. So, you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, but guess what? The reason me and Matt do this podcast is because we like hanging out with each other. It's fun for
Yeah.
us to talk to each other. And if we didn't, we would actually never speak to each other. This is like the only time we talk. So yeah, we love each other, and I appreciate you noticing that we are agreeably disagreeable.
I texted one of our brothers last night because I had done something to hurt his feelings and I felt bad and I thought I should apologize.
That was
Uh,
mature of you.
yeah, it doesn't happen all the
I'm
time.
sorry, surprisingly mature of you.
My mom made me do it.
Okay.
And then he texted me back and he's like, I'm jealous of the relationship you have with our sisters. And I'm like, you should try podcasting. You could have a great.
Hey.
All right, Melissa, let's get to the quick clips.
Okay, quick clips. We're going to run through it real quickly, but this first one is pretty big deal. The church has released not the entire manual, but a new manual is coming out from teachings of the presidents of the church. So these are all found in the gospel library. There's a bunch of past prophets, and there's a bunch of teachings of the prophets or presidents of the church. And the church just released 4 chapters of the newest book in this series, which is President Russell M. Nelson. So, Teachings of the President Russell M. Nelson.
And they're in the app, right? The
They're
Gospel
in
Library app.
the Gospel Library app. You can see 4 chapters now. They're going to release 2 chapters a month continuously until they get all 28 out there.
So I'm
But of
confused.
note, okay, well, go ahead.
So I thought the teachings of the presidents thing was like manuals that we would read in Priesthood and Relief Society.
Yeah, we used to, but since we've switched to Come Follow Me, we don't anymore. But they're still in the Gospel Library as things you can study.
For what? Just to study?
For
It's like,
what
hey,
purpose, Matt?
I'm sorry. Hey, what did Joseph Fielding Smith think
Let's
about
see. I
this?
could watch YouTube, or I guess I could read the teachings of President
Got
Ezra
it.
Taft Benson.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Matt, it depends what kind of a person you want to be. But this is the first time that a living president of the church has had their teachings released, and they're releasing them digitally because they say like, hey, this is cool because as he continues to teach, things can be added. So if he gives a really great sermon on faith, it can be added to the chapter on faith as he's still alive. So
Would that,
check
if
that
you
out.
were, let's just put you in President Nelson's shoes.
Oh, please. Yes, let's do that.
Would you feel awkward? I would feel so awkward.
No.
I would feel awkward having a book of the things I had said in church.
Everything's already published. Everything's
Oh,
already online.
he kind of knows.
It's just putting it into categories for you,
Yeah.
like this is
Okay.
all about repentance.
Okay.
Nah, I think it's great.
I hate it when people quote me. I'm like, well, I don't know that I agree with myself anymore.
And then they pull up the clip and they're like, but you exactly said this. And you're like, no. I know I said it. I'm just not sure I mean it.
I think we know I'm not president of the church material. Like,
Noted. Okay.
okay. It's actually fairly big news, but the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has now been officially registered in Azerbaijan,
Wait,
which
Azerbaijan.
I
I'm
know
sure
it's
you said it right. I just didn't know.
Azerbaijan. Yeah, it's a Muslim country, and
Okay.
we've done stories on the podcast about dignitaries from their country visiting church leaders in Utah. And I imagine that a lot of this was just kind of a lead up to like saying, "Can we trust you? Are you a like we give humanitarian donations to the country, but
Okay.
we have members of the church there, and we would like to be officially recognized as a church." And so it's a big deal that they've recognized us. It doesn't always happen in countries, but it's an important step in having a missionary program.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So that means we can start sending missionaries there?
I mean, I don't know if that happens right away, but yeah, it's a step towards that.
So I know you're not church president material, but are you mission president of Azerbaijan
Oh, I
material?
would go there in a heartbeat. Like,
Really?
yeah, because I have a master's in Russian East European studies. So I studied a lot of those regions, and
Mhm.
Azerbaijan, the food there is delicious. The people there are amazing. The landscape, like so much about Azerbaijan. If you have a chance to go there as a tourist, go there instead of to Russia, because Russia, you might get thrown in jail and kidnapped and things like that. Azerbaijan, that won't happen, and it's a better climate. And just, yeah, I would go there in a heartbeat.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you covered that one and not me. Whew. Okay. Next up, a church building in Magna, Utah was vandalized. It was pretty significant vandalization, about $60,000 in damages. If you click the link on the show notes, listener, you can see images of what happened, but they really tore things apart, like
Yeah.
more than necessary. Nobody has been caught. Here's what I think. They don't know when it happened, sometime between Sunday night and Tuesday night. So what does that tell me?
It was not locked.
It wasn't locked, right?
Yeah,
It was
right.
left unlocked. Somebody found it. Like, I don't think this was like intentionally targeting, like, I'm going to go to that church and find a way in and target those
No, no, no.
Mormons. Yeah.
I don't want to be mean to people from Magna, but
Oh, but you're
our, mo-
about to be.
our mom graduated from Cypress High School, which is in Magna.
Uh huh.
And I'm just going to guess that like summertime, Magna, Utah, maybe there's not a lot of stuff to do. And
Yeah.
somebody's like, hey, the church is open. Why don't we bash in some windows or something like that?
Mm hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like sometimes
Probably
when
the
you're
bishop's son. Probably the bishop's son.
sometimes when you're a kid, destruction of property feels like a nice summer activity, things you can do.
Speaking from experience.
I would never.
Uh huh.
Okay,
Okay.
so my story is lighthearted. So it used to be, I know this because my wife's from Southern California. The Los Angeles Dodgers would have a Mormon night where you could invite members of the church. They could come. I think they maybe got discount on baseball tickets or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard about this. They have like some big person in the church throw out the opening pitch, like
Yeah,
one of the apostles sometimes.
sometimes. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I don't know if they still do that with the Dodgers, but the Arizona Diamondbacks recently they called it Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Family Night, and they
Well, they
invited,
did. They didn't call it Mormon night.
no, they called it Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Family Night.
Okay, cool.
And then so members of the church came, and then this is there. I have both of these stories in the show notes. My favorite thing is, so one of the Diamondbacks announcers sees this crowd, and he's like, "Hey, what a cool shirt!" This kid has a T-shirt that says, "I can't do that. I'm a Mormon," something like that, right?
Okay, okay, uh-huh.
I'm not allowed to do that. I'm a Mormon. But the announcer sees his shirt and thinks it says, "I'm a moron." And so he's like, "Hey, I love this shirt. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm a moron." Oh, how clever. And he did it on like the LDS family night.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so funny.
Uh-huh. But the
Yeah.
kid got to be on television, and he got
Okay.
like you really, if you knew that it said Mormon, like it didn't really look like Moron at all. But I'm sure the announcer didn't. It just didn't
Right.
click in his head, right?
Yeah,
Of what
yeah,
it,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, well,
Hmm.
that's cool. Okay, the next story is the church has a new social media page, both on Instagram and on Facebook, which is targeted directly to young adults. So we've
Oh,
got all of the other ones done, but now we've just added on one for young adults. And it's fine. I was kind of hopeful when I started reading this article that it would be like this is where they're going to meet each other, like it's going to be the mutual but actually church. But no, it's focused on the gospel and Jesus Christ. So it's just
yeah,
another account to follow. But it did make me start thinking, by the way, if you're looking for it, it's ya.weekly. Ya.weekly. But it did make me think who in the church is managing this account, right? Because we know like
yeah,
the Young Women's General Board is managing the Young Women's account, and like the Relief Society has their own account. And we don't, I mean, technically this would fall under adults, right? But it's not under Relief Society or Elders Quorum necessarily. So I was just wondering who's over this account. And then it made me start thinking like the church is putting a lot of emphasis into young adults lately, right? Like they've got all
mm,
these conferences that they're throwing, these big summer conferences.
yeah,
They've really changed the age to accommodate wards better for this group, right? They're focusing on podcasts directed specifically to this group. Like they're really focused on this group. And it made me
yeah,
think, are you ready for this prediction?
yeah.
How about we have new presidencies over young single adults?
Oh, like an auxiliary, like how
Yeah, like an auxiliary.
we have young
Because like
men,
they're
young women.
definitely not youth. A lot of people talk about them as though they are youth, but they're not
They're
youth.
definitely not
They're
youth.
definitely not youth, and they are adults. But again, where we're seeing all these programs directed specifically for them, it'd be kind of cool to have them as their own auxiliary, I think.
Hmm. And then what would it be? Young single adults that would be in charge of the auxiliary, or would it be old
Why
people?
not?
Hmm. That's interesting, Melissa.
Thank
I
you.
I noticed that the Relief Society General Board has single adults on the Relief
Yes.
Society General
And so
Board
does
right
the
now.
Young Women's General Board.
Ah.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, I don't know. Well, this is the other thing I wanted to note when you were talking about this. The Young Single Adult Conference is happening right now in
Mhm.
Utah.
Yeah.
And do you know who's singing at the concert tonight? I'm so excited. Rachel
No.
Platten.
Rachel Platten.
I'm
I
so
I
excited.
don't know who that is.
This is my fight song, Take Back My Something song.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. She's
I
not the only
know.
one though. There's a couple of people coming, it seems like.
I know. But, the young single adults don't really know Rachel Platten all that much. It sort of feels like
Um,
it was a concert made for me that I'm not allowed to go
uh,
to.
okay, yeah. Um, I'm getting the trickle down word that this year's conference isn't going to be nearly as successful as last year's.
Oh, really?
Well, I guess we'll have to see when it's over. But I mean, I know that the first conference that they did, which was last year, they had planned, I think, for 3 years to
Yeah.
kick that off. And now it's just kind of like repeat, repeat. But yeah,
And there
I haven't heard very much enthusiasm. I've heard a lot of calls for volunteers that have gone unanswered. So I don't know if it's going to generate as much enthusiasm, but I still love the idea of it.
and they expanded it. They did one in Idaho. They're doing one
Yeah.
in East Idaho specifically. So
Yeah.
that
They're
too
doing quite
makes
a
it.
few.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Melissa, it's time for us to talk Olympic news.
Okay,
Now,
Matt. We've already established that I am the lone person in the United States that is not watching the Olympics at all. It doesn't mean I
yeah,
don't care. It just I'd rather be on my boat. Okay, so you've got this.
I love the Summer Olympics so much. There are not enough events. Like there are so many events I can't watch all of them that I want to watch because there are just so
Oh,
many. But my DVR is filled up with Olympic events that I want to watch. Okay,
fabulous. What if you find out who won before you get a chance to watch
well
it?
that's my problem is that my children like to watch things and the news likes to report things and I'm like, "Shush, shush. I need to
Yeah.
experience it." Yeah,
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. I
I'm
have
so
to
sorry
not
for
watch
you.
the news about it.
Okay.
Okay, so there are three stories that I want to talk about that are related to members of our church and the Olympics. So
Okay.
first, we'll talk about Michaela Skinner and Simone Biles and the little.
Okay. Little beef
Now,
they're having.
so she's a U of U gymnast, right? Michaela Skinner.
Michaela. Mm-hmm.
Is she a member of the church? Do we know?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So she competed in the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, which
Won
happened, I think, in
silver.
20. Yeah, She won
Yeah.
silver, but that's the one where Simone Biles had to drop out because she got I don't know what they call it in gymnastics, the twisties. They call it the twisties.
Yeah. So they were teammates.
Yeah, but it put a lot of pressure on the team because Simone Biles was the best gymnast in the world and she dropped out.
Gotcha.
And they were already there. And so before the Olympics, Michaela Skinner had some criticism of the women's Olympic team that was heading over to Paris for the United
Yeah.
States.
It
And guess
wasn't
what?
nice. It
Guess
wasn't
what?
nice. What?
The women did awesome. They
They
won the gold. And I
Yeah.
think Simone Biles won the all around women's gold in gymnastics.
Yeah.
So Simone Biles, as all good Christians should, responded in kind on
After
social
she
media.
after she won the gold, after the team won the gold,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
responded.
And she was not nice. We'll just say that. She said some unkind things. But basically it was just like, hey, see how awesome we are? How dare you say mean things
Listen,
about
you
us?
snap, Simone will snap back. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Then Michaela Skinner blocked Simone Biles on social media. So hopefully they're
Oh,
still friends. Hopefully they're still
I
close.
hope that they can make up and forgive and come back together as supreme gymnasts.
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 So
Wow.
here's my second story. Jimmer Fredette. Do you remember Jimmer Fredette?
I love Jimmer.
So
Hold
there's
on, before you tell the story, I have to say this really quick.
uh-huh.
Jimmer Fredette. Jimmer Fredette will ever be a part of my life. In fact, the name Jimmer is included in several of my passwords. Try to figure those. But here's why, because my son is named Trevor.
Uh-huh.
And when he was in 5th and 6th grade, wanted to start going by TJ instead of Trevor. So his initials are TSJ. Like his middle name starts with an S, but he didn't want to go by TS. He wanted to go by TJ. So as he started making this transition from Trevor to TJ, then people would say, well, what does the J stand for? And do you want to know what he told them? Jimmer. He told everybody his name was Trevor Jimmer because he loved Jimmer Fredette so much.
That's a great
So
story.
Trevor Jimmer TJ,
Well,
not
so
his real name.
the Olympics has an event called 3x3, and it's half court basketball, and it's 3 players against 3 players. First one to 21 wins. And Jimmer Fredette has been a phenom in this sport. And so you get 4 players, and Jimmer Fredette's been on the 3x3 team for the U.S. And I've been watching all of their games. But Jimmer got hurt in the
Oh, shoot.
in their second game. So they've now lost 3 games in a row, and it's not going to end well for the team. But it was so fun to see Jimmer out there in the Olympics. And I have to say, Melissa, he kind of looked like an old man to me, which I wasn't used to. I was used to young BYU Jimmer, and
Old
now
man,
he's
as in older than you? Because no.
no, he didn't look that old. He just looked old. He looked like a man who's been living in China playing a lot of basketball,
Yeah,
which
he's
he's
still at
been
the
up to.
top of his game, even so. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. So has he won a medal, or is it
No,
not to that stage
no.
yet?
No, it's not to that stage yet, but they're not going to make it to that round, I believe, because they haven't won any games. Yeah,
Okay.
you have to win at least 2 in this first round in order. It's called pool play to
Okay.
make it to the knockout round. I don't think they're going to make it.
Okay.
Oh, the other fun thing is on his team, there's a guy named Canyon Barry. And Canyon Barry's dad, Rick Barry, was very famous in basketball because he would shoot his free throws underhanded. We call him granny style.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so Canyon Barry, when he gets fouled and goes to the free throw line at the Olympics, is shooting his free throws underhanded.
I
Throwing,
love that.
yeah,
I
it's
love
really
that so much. There was I can't remember if it was a book or a movie on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Kareem used to shoot that way before his coaches made him stop doing that.
oh
But he actually ran all the statistics and was like, "You're much more likely to make the foul shot if you shoot it underhand, and I'm
yeah
going to keep doing it this way." But they were finally like, "No, man, like we can't have this anymore. Like it is an image issue," and so he had to learn how to shoot the other way.
yeah. I have not seen Canyon miss a free throw. He's shot a lot of them that way, and he's made every single one of them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay, the last Olympic story is the church put out a list of all of the Latter-day Saints in the Olympics. And
Mhm.
another website that just focuses on openly gay athletes put out their list of openly gay athletes. And it turns out that there's a member of our church. Her name is Steph Ravetti. She is both a member of our church and openly gay, and she's on both lists. And so I thought it was worth noting that I was actually happy because sometimes when a person says they're openly gay, we stopped kind of acknowledging them as a member of our church anymore. And I don't know if she still attends church or not, but I was happy that both the church and this other website claimed her as one of their own, because
Yeah.
we claim you, Steph Rovetti. We're happy that you're one of us and in the Olympics.
Yeah, and it looks like she's an amazing athlete. She's on the USA rugby team, but I was reading a little bit about her, and like she's accomplished a lot as an athlete outside of rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says she was on the BYU women's basketball team. They went to Sweet 16, and she was named Nevada Runner of the Year one year.
Wow.
So yeah, she's impressive. So hey, shout out.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a great Olympic update. Thanks, Maddie.
Yes,
Um,
you're welcome.
Next story, there's a new museum and it is in Charleston. It's called Charleston's International African American Museum. And they
Okay.
are actually a museum that specializes in Black genealogy.
Oh,
And they were able to do so because they got a $2 million donation from our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day
wow.
Saints. So in addition to accessing like all of the genealogical records and stuff like that from Family Search and from our church, the church gave them a big donation so that they could open or at least have an exhibit in this museum specifically dedicated to Black Americans and their genealogy. So I thought that
That's
was worth,
really cool. I
yeah,
like that. Thanks, Melissa.
yeah.
Okay, this story is designed to make everyone feel guilty, and you're going to. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you happen to live in the village of Umuarium, Nigeria. If that's
Oh,
where you're
I
from.
I don't. Okay.
Oh, too bad. I was going to
Okay.
give you props. Okay, so there are no full-time missionaries that serve in that village, but
Okay.
that did not stop the members of the Umuarium Obobo branch from doing missionary work themselves. During the month of July, they baptized 31 converts into the church
Whoa.
with just the efforts from the branch members, with no full-time missionary help. Like,
Wow.
that's as many in one branch as some missions have in their entire month of the whole mission, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of baptism. There are some like areas where that's your whole year, maybe some like 2 years.
That could have significantly that could have even doubled the number of people in their church in their branch. Branches are very small, especially where you don't
Yeah,
have missionaries.
yeah,
Okay, you're right. I don't feel guilty, but I do feel big shout out to them.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wonder if ward mission leaders will be looking to that story to be like, how did they do it? What can we do?
It'll show up in general conference, don't you think?
Oh,
Somebody's going to
yes,
share
you're
it.
right. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, next up, the church, donated another donation to help with the Maui wildfires. It's actually been a whole year since that big devastation in Maui due to the wildfires. That was last August.
Wow.
And back when that happened, the church donated $1 million to the Red Cross. However, they recognize that there is still so much work to be done in Maui to help people get back to normal. 5 Latter-day Saints died in the fire. Of note,
Oh,
80 members of a single congregation lost their home. Can you
whoa.
imagine if in your ward, if 80 people lost their home?
Wow.
And it's a year later, but there's still so much that needs to be done. So, just recently this week, the church donated another 1.5 million to efforts there in Maui.
Wow. That's so cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love when our church does good stuff like that.
Me
It's
too.
also true that a year ago, people just forget about it, right? So I doubt that donations are still pouring in to help people out because they're like,
Right.
you should be done with that by now.
Right. Yeah.
Or we just forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this story is going to be way more academic and possibly boring to our liesers, but I think
Ooh,
it's
time for me
important.
to get a drink. Okay, carry on.
Okay, so Royal Skousen Jr., I think he's a junior. He's a retired English professor from BYU, and for the last 30 years, he has been working on a project called the Book of Mormon Critical Text Project, and it's finally completed. I know, Melissa's getting excited. It's finally
That's a
completed, and
big eye roll. First, I'm
yeah,
sorry. I know you need to finish this story, but his name's Royal?
Royal Skousen.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
That's a good name, right?
I mean, yeah, it's an
If it-
unusual name.
if it's good enough for a shade of blue, it's good enough to name your child.
Okay.
Okay, so apparently, from the very, very beginning, the critical text analysis of the Book of Mormon is saying that it examines the way the text of the Book of Mormon has changed over time. So even going from what Oliver Cowdery wrote on the piece of paper to the typescript that got printed in the original Book of Mormon, there were changes made because there were like grammar changes or things like that. And so this project is all about letting members of the church see all of the changes of the text of the Book of Mormon from the very, very beginning when Joseph said the words to what we have now.
I see.
So, yeah, I don't know, like everybody has their own fields of scholarship, but to me, this is a really cool thing because sometimes you'll read something in the Book of Mormon and you'll say, where did that come from? Like maybe Joseph Smith heard people talking about that or something like that. And a project like this will let you say, look, Joseph Smith used a word that people said in English in the 1500s, but nobody said by the time he was alive.
I
And
see.
where would that word come from? Unless maybe inspiration or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's the overarching part of this story then?
Saturday, August 10th, at the Gordon B. Hinckley Alumni Building on the campus of BYU, there's going to be a little event to celebrate this. And so
Okay.
if you're into that kind of thing, you can go down there. I'm sure it's free. There's a link in our show notes. You can hobnob with the 5 other people in the world that, like you, care about this sort of
Yeah.
thing. And it'll be air conditioned. It'll be pleasant.
I think I'll go. I
I
think I'll
know
be
that.
there.
I know 100% that you won't be there.
I will not be there. If I need air conditioning, I will be in a movie theater. Thank you.
Watching Twisters. Have you seen Twisters, Melissa?
No,
Oh,
I
you've got to see
haven't.
Twisters. You've
Is it
got to see
good?
it. It's so good. Yes.
I saw Fall Guy, loved Fall Guy,
Yeah,
and
that's pretty good.
I wanna see the new Quiet Place. I know it's been out for a little while, but I wait till it's been out for a while so that I can go see it more cheaply.
Twisters is way better than both of those.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
I only went to it initially because my wife had free movie tickets from Giving Blood. And because when we were in Oklahoma last summer, we were in a city and they were filming the movie there. And I was like, oh, I've got
Okay.
to go see this. But then I went to it and I was like, this is probably the best movie I've seen in a long time. It is the best movie of the summer, Twisters. It seems weird. It seems like, how could it possibly be? But it really
Yeah.
is that good. Yeah.
Okay. Alright.
Okay. We're going to move on to Famous Mormons, Melissa.
Yes! Dun, 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 dun.
It's the rock.
Famous.
Fame. Because it's the rock star edition this week. Yeah. So
Okay.
maybe we could get one of these famous Mormon rock stars to write a little jingle for our famous Mormons.
For
Famous
sure.
Mormons.
Okay, for sure. Although we don't need one. What you just did was excellent.
Now, I happen to know that you're not into rock and roll.
I am too.
Oh, okay. So I hope you know these bands. So
Okay, me too. I hope so too.
it's which frontman of these famous bands
Okay.
is a member of the church?
Why don't you say the band and we'll see if I know the front man.
Yeah, that'll be okay. First one is My Chemical Romance.
I don't know, but I do know them.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Their frontman's name is Gerard Way.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is Panic at the Disco. Do you know
Okay,
Panic
no.
at Do you know Panic
Yes,
at
I have their songs on my playlist. I like them a lot.
Okay, their frontman is named Brendan Urie.
Okay.
Okay, the
Okay.
last one is 21 Pilots.
Yes.
Do you know them?
Love 21 Pilots.
Okay, their frontman is Tyler Joseph.
Okay. I did not win at the game of guessing their front man's name. I'm sorry.
No, you lost at
Okay,
that.
I'm surprised that any of these 3 could be Mormon or Mormon adjacent.
Yeah.
I want it to be Panic at the Disco.
It is.
It
You're
is?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Tell me more.
And in fact, Panic at the Disco has had a lot of other band members over the years, like a bass player will come or go or whatever. And
Okay.
Brendan Urie started it with his friends. He was from Las Vegas, started with his friends, and then he's had various other people over the years. But he and his wife just had a baby, and so he's announced that they're retiring because he wants to stay home and raise the baby.
Wait,
And
Panic at the Disco will be no more?
yeah, they're kind of done. They did a tour called Leaving Loss. I can't remember what it was, but yeah,
Okay.
according to the story, or if you look on their Wikipedia, they're kind of done. But
I'm
yeah,
looking at their Wikipedia right now just because I'm really interested. Matt, that was a
yeah.
fun one. Well done today, Matt.
Thank you. Nobody would have guessed that unless they knew Brendan Urie, huh?
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed it, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
good for me.
cool. Okay, it's time for big deal, little deal, No deal. And Matt, my first story, it's a wave maker.
It's so
Okay.
exciting.
Okay. Here's my headline. Caffeinated soda now for sale at BYU, Idaho. Big
Oh
deal.
my
I
goodness.
know. Big deal, little deal, or no deal. 3, 2, 1.
Big
No
deal.
deal.
No, it's a big deal, Melissa.
Okay. As a person of BYU, Idaho fame, please tell me why it's a big deal. Because now
because
you can not have to walk across the street to get your caffeinated beverages.
because BYU has had caffeinated beverages for like 12 years.
7.
Oh, okay. And And I'm not joking. Like when people ask what it's like at BYU Idaho at conferences and stuff, I'll say, "Let me tell you about BYU Idaho. We used to have this juice called Naked Juice,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
took it off the shelves because it had unholy connotations, and so they stopped selling Naked Juice because it had the word naked
Like,
in it."
oh,
So, there's some kind of a joke like "Welcome to Idaho. Set your watch back 20 years" or something like
it's
that.
true.
Sometimes it feels that way with like BYU will do something and then BYU Idaho will like come along later on.
Yeah.
Actually, I think BYU Hawaii is the first to do it and then everybody else sort of follows them. So
Yeah.
it's just a big deal because I not
Um,
that I actually don't even drink caffeinated beverages that often. So it doesn't matter for me, but it's just like a symbol of like the shackles are being removed,
yes.
freedom.
Okay, here's what I think. First of all, I think it's all due to new BYU president, President Meredith, okay?
Yes,
Who,
yes.
by the way, if you haven't listened to our interview with him a couple months ago, is one of the best interviews I've
Yeah,
enjoyed so much.
yeah,
But he's one of those people who's like a real person, general authority.
yeah.
And I'm sure he was like, "Where's my Diet Dr. Pepper? What is going on in this place?" That's my guess number one. My
Yeah.
guess number two is that BYU Idaho is like the stake presidency member who doesn't want you to wear a beard. That's BYU Idaho.
And we're trying to change that image. We're trying to
And we're
change that.
trying to change that image.
Yeah.
I hope. It's funny in the article about this. They referred back to an NPR story that said, "Can Mormons drink Coca-Cola?" And despite what was reported, church revelation spelling out health practices does not mention the use of caffeine. The church's health guidelines prohibit alcoholic drinks, smoking, chewing tobacco, and hot drinks. Yeah, duh. It's not doctrine. I don't know why we've been putting ourselves on this hill to die for so long, but I'm so happy for everybody in BYU, Idaho, that they can now freely. Oh, sorry, hold on. They will not be selling energy drinks, just so you know.
Oh.
But you can freely get your caffeine that's not too much caffeine. Okay? Okay.
That, by the way, that reminded me of our interview with Tim Stewart again, where he's like, "You can tell the faithfulness of a member of the church by the temperature at which they consume their caffeine.
True that. True
You
that.
can't have that hot caffeine, but you can
But the
have it
cold
cold."
caffeine. Enjoy.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our stories on the BYUs.
Okay.
So this is big deal, little deal, no deal. BYU announces they will be opening a medical school. Is that a big deal, little deal, or no deal? 3, 2, 1. No
Big
deal.
deal.
Oh,
You say no deal?
no deal.
It's a medical school. That is a
But it
huge deal.
but it's not really a medical school. That's why I say that.
What do you mean? They can't announce they're opening a medical school and it not be a medical school.
You actually,
Especially when they're like
actually,
35 minutes away from one of the best medical schools in the country. University
that's
of Utah shout out.
that's
Um,
why I put that link in the show notes
okay.
because the University of Utah is applauding this announcement because guess whose medical school it really is? University of Utah.
Wait, what do you mean?
The University of Utah and Governor Spencer Cox have been like, hey, we need more medical professionals in the state of Utah. So the
Okay.
University of Utah went to Utah Tech University and they said, hey, let's expand the offerings that you have at Utah Tech. Why don't we open up like a nursing school or a school that specializes in certain kinds of medicine and we can train? So it'll be through University of Utah Medical School, but it'll be housed at Utah Tech University. And
Huh.
BYU is doing the same thing. This is a partnership with the University of Utah that BYU is going to, I think that's the announcement says they're going to focus on specialized, like international medicine, right? So
Interesting.
it's a way to kind of help members of the church who aren't trying to be like neurosurgeons or things like that, but just maybe you want to be a physician's assistant, or maybe you want to be a nurse or something like that. And you can get the training at BYU or through BYU, but it'll focus on international education of medical professionals.
So that's why, because I had heard that it's not going to include a hospital. And I was like, how
Right.
do you have a medical school without a hospital?
Right. They're going to do. They're going to
Interesting.
team up with Intermountain Health, right, to do.
Okay.
And they're not going. They also said we're not focused on research, right? We're focused on teaching. So
Okay.
that's because you're gonna. It's kind of an. I mean, I don't want to overstate things, right? But if you read this article from the University of Utah, there's a collaborative effort, and they're going to be a joint program. It's really not BYU versus U of U who's going
I
to have the
see.
best medical school.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. It could morph over the years, though.
Uh, it's just, Melissa, it costs so much money to have a medical
Well,
school.
that's why I was excited about it, because I was like, will BYU be able to offer a medical school at the same sort of tuition decrease that it offers all of its regular education? That's why I was like, this is a big deal.
Yeah, I don't think that they're intending to do that.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about doing things like teaching how to like abortion procedures or LGBTQ affirmative care procedures, stuff like that?
Yeah, so that's another. I put that article in the show notes too, because people are wondering, because you cannot, if you're at BYU, if you go to the medical center and you want gender affirming care, BYU last year announced that they're no longer offering gender affirming care at their medical facilities. And so there are people that are wondering, like, will BYU do all of these other things? Are they going to teach a doctor how to perform an abortion? Because some schools that are religiously affiliated don't teach you how to do that. But again, I think that the answer to these questions that people are posing really just falls under understanding like what it is and what it isn't. And
I
it
see.
isn't going to be a traditional medical school. It's going to be a collaborative effort with U of U Medical School.
Okay. That was good, Matt.
But
Well
that makes
done.
it an even bigger deal for you, right? Because you like the University of Utah, and
I
it's
love
like,
the University of Utah, and they are
yeah,
a phenomenal medical school.
yeah,
And of course, they're just so generous of heart in offering to, partner with other institutions.
yeah. There you
Yeah.
go.
Okay. Next, here we go. Orthodox and liberal Latter-day Saints are more alike than they may realize. Big, Matt, you can't laugh before I count you down. Big deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1.
No deal.
Little deal. Matt, I like to throw these things at you because I always know you're not going to think it's a big deal at all. But here's what I hear when I'm out and about in the world, Matt. Everybody's in a fight with everybody else, okay? Everybody in the world is fighting about politics, and a lot of people feel like it's very hateful. And also additionally, although not related to this article, did you know that what's our generation called? Gen
Gen
X?
X. Gen
Gen
X.
X is in a war with Gen Z.
What?
Yeah, we're in a war, apparently.
Wait a minute.
Didn't
Now
know, did you?
I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out how this is related to this story.
My point is that people feel divided. People feel
Oh,
divided, okay? And Matthew Bowman, who is the Howard W. Hunter Chair of Mormon Studies at Claremont Graduate University, Matthew
yes.
Bowman says, hey, you guys, you're not that different. No matter where you stand on the political spectrum or where you stand on the religious spectrum, right? Orthodox, liberal, whatever, you're actually very, very much alike. And the reason I picked this article is because do you want to know the point where everybody agrees? I thought this was
Yes.
fascinating. This was
Yeah.
fascinating. The point where everybody agrees is agency.
Oh, you love that. That's your
Love
favorite.
agency. It's my favorite gospel principle. But yeah, he just explained that like everybody agrees on agency. Where we disagree on is what that means and how we practice that. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so when he says orthodox, he's not describing me, because I don't love agency, if I'm being honest.
Okay, Matt, you say you don't love agency, but you do
Right.
love agency. What you like is a government having agency over how its people do things. So, for example, you like laws, right?
Yes, I do.
You like laws that explain, like, here is how people should use their time and
Ag-
energy. Right.
yes.
Yeah. And so like he's saying like that's just another form of agency. It's just looking at it differently. Like who should be in
Oh,
charge of agency? Should it be the individual or should it be a government that's protecting all individual agency?
okay.
That's
No,
the
it's
difference.
true. You're right. As a gospel principle, I love agency as a gospel principle. It's
Yeah.
true.
Okay.
In my opinion, agency is what makes it so that people want to do anything at all in life. If you didn't have agency, like, anyhow,
Yeah, if you
we don't
felt
want to.
forced, you would always push against it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
We don't need to spend a lot of time. I just wanted to throw it out there.
I want to thank Matthew Bowman for trying to unite two groups of members of our church who feel so divided against
Yes.
each
And
other.
to Gen Z, I'm not in the war. I'm not in the war. Okay.
I didn't know there was a war.
I remove myself.
We wave the white flag.
White
You
flag.
win.
Okay. Okay. Done.
Okay. This headline: the rebranding of Latter-day Saints to a Christian denomination.
Okay.
How should Christians respond? Question mark.
Oh,
Big
okay.
deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1. No
Little
deal.
deal
Yeah, no
to
deal.
no deal.
I just put it in here because this is a Christian who's noticed the rebranding of our church, and he points out all of the ways that we are not Christian, meaning we don't celebrate the Trinity, we don't believe in creeds, and I understand why members of our church want to say, no, no, we're Christian because we believe in Jesus. But we don't want like an Episcopalian to walk into our church and feel like they're just walking into any other Lutheran, Baptist, whatever denomination. We're not just another Christian denomination. And so I actually really appreciate this story where he's saying, letting all the Christians know, hey, that church is not just another Christian denomination, because we're not. We believe
Okay.
very different things than what they believe. And
Okay.
for a lot of our history, we've tried to distinguish ourselves from all of those people. And so it seems weird to them now that we're trying to sound like we're just another one of them.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you for explaining that. I said little deal because how should Christians respond? It just went back to agency to me.
And we shouldn't tell them what to do. We
And do we
shouldn't.
now have to be in a fight between Latter-day Saint Christians and other Christians? Come on.
We wave the flag.
Wave the
You
flag. Wave
call
the
us
flag.
whatever you want to call us. We don't care.
That's
Just
right.
use the right name of the church when you call us, whatever you're going to call us.
That's right. Okay. All right. Hey, have you heard of Ballerina Farm? It's a person
Yes.
on Instagram. Okay. Here's your headline then. Okay. LDS influencer Ballerina Farm is adamant she is not oppressed. Big deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1.
Big
Big
deal.
deal. Oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. That's a
Yeah.
big deal.
I'm so glad you said big deal. I mainly think it's a big deal because Ballerina Farm, whose name is Hannah Neeleman in real life, but you can follow her at Ballerina Farm. You'll be one of literally millions and millions of people who follow her. And that's why I think it's a big deal, is because she has so many followers.
Yeah.
I think if I was to describe her, I would say she's like the queen of the trad wives, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, she started the whole trad wife thing, and she is actually the real deal living the real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she has
Well, we have to in Camas, Utah, with a lot of money, right? So it's
okay.
not trad wife the way that I would have grown up trad wife, where you don't have a lot of money and you do that stuff because you have no other choice. Like, she has money
Mm,
enough that she could choose a different life. She's
yeah.
choosing the trad wife life.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, yeah, so she does live this very, like, on a cow farm, make everything
Hmm.
from scratch. She has 8 children, but she also is, like, Mrs. America, right?
Yeah.
She's, or at least was last year,
Yeah.
Mrs. Utah, Mrs. America, competed in Mrs. World. But yeah, her Instagram account is very much about faith and family and also fitness and a lot of things. But what she did is she agreed to be interviewed by the London Times, and they wrote an article about her. And when it came out, she was very much offended,
Yeah.
because she's like, listen, I thought that you were going to do a generous and kind interview with me. And I brought out my kids and we posed and I took you out to my farm and all this stuff. And basically, their whole article was like, hey, she is an oppressed woman and her husband oppresses her. And she was like, super offended. Like, I can't believe this is what you decided to publish after coming out and visiting with all of us. And so she responded to it. And basically, her response was like, this is unfair. This is unkind. And it's literally untrue. Like, and I think she did a good job of responding to it. She wasn't mean, but she just did a quick little post and was like, here's the thing. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a mother, I'm a farmer, And me and my husband are co-CEOs. We do everything together. We change diapers together and we milk cows together and we do it all together. And I love my life. And that was it.
Yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts on this because I know her brother really, really well. We're
Oh,
like
okay.
close personal friends. And so I
Uh-huh.
just happen to know that her whole family was homeschooled because
Okay.
they had a family business and they said, we want our kids to learn the family business and we're going to teach them at home. And so they were raised in a particular way. And their siblings are all tremendously successful, each one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when this
Oh, is
came
that
out,
why? Because Neeleman, isn't that JetBlue?
yeah, that's her husband, but her own family, like her brothers and sisters,
Oh, okay.
like, have you ever heard of Wright Sheds in Utah?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's her family. Like her brothers do that, the Wright Shed
Okay.
company.
Okay. Okay.
Like they've all been very successful in the lives that they've chosen for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this conversation with my wife sometimes because like to her being a feminist means that you allow women to do what they want to do with their lives.
Right.
And she has chosen to do this with her life, and it might not be what another woman would choose, but to criticize a woman for living the life she wants to live, like she chose this life. This is
Yeah.
the world she created for herself.
Yeah.
And so to call someone oppressed for doing something that they love just seems disingenuous. It's unkind.
Yeah, there's not only one way to be a woman. That's in fact anti-feminist, is to believe that there's only one way. Yeah.
So if you look at a person's relationship with their spouse from afar, it's very easy to judge and say he's telling her what to do, but how would anybody possibly know that? Like how, and like in the story it's like, well, before she answers she looks to her husband. Guess what? I do that all the time. Before I answer, I look to my wife because
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, like, am I going to say something I'm going to regret? That's not oppression, right? That's just a
Right.
way some
Or
people are in their
because you trust
relationship.
them, or like with me, I literally am more myself, but also a better person with my husband by my side. Everybody who
Yeah.
knows me knows that he's the good person in our relationship, but that I am more comfortably myself when I'm with him. So that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that I'm oppressed. It means that I like to be with him because I'm a better person.
So I don't know the trad wife movement very much. I only know this woman tangentially, but I do get offended when people start judging like social media influencers
Yeah,
based on decisions they make.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, you have the next one too.
I do because I think it's semi-related, although not very much. But here's your headline, okay? Perfect Latter-day Saints. Wealthy and religious Latter-day Saints are more likely to get plastic surgery. Big deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1.
No
Big
deal.
deal.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's not something that we need to talk about for a long time, but it's long been known that Utah is the hub of plastic surgery.
I see those
And
billboards all along the
yes,
freeway.
okay, but now we have actual statistics because we had a survey done and about 1,500 church members completed the survey. All of them were Latter-day Saints. Of the people who completed the surgery, 14% have undergone plastic surgery. So,
What?
like tummy tuck, liposuction, breast augmentation,
14
14%.
So they're estimating that 14% of Latter-day Saints, I'm going to guess it's like Utah area, have
Okay,
had plastic surgery.
yes. And do you want to know what the national average is?
What is like? It's got to be less than
4%. So it's not a made up
3 times
thing.
higher.
It's a real thing. Okay.
Three times higher.
Yeah. So they took some of the respondents of this survey who had said, like, yes, I've had plastic surgery. And they kind of narrowed it down to this focus group of 126 people that they wanted to have in depth conversations with to find out more. Do you want to know where the majority of this focus group lived?
Utah?
Draper, Utah. Draper moms. Draper moms is a real thing. And so they did these more in-depth interviews with these people. And what they found is it's not just LDS or Utah women that are having plastic surgery. It's people who are LDS, but also wealthy
Mm.
and highly religious. So extremely religious.
What?
Yeah. Yep.
That doesn't make
Um,
sense to me.
Tell me why. Yes, exactly. Why doesn't it make sense?
Because the Book of Mormon talks all about how you should use your money to like help other people and help the poor, and we
Hmm.
shouldn't be so focused on like vanity and riches and all of that sort of stuff.
Okay, interesting. Yes. I hadn't even thought of that perspective. Yeah. I just think it doesn't make sense because it's pretty vain. Like,
Right.
and
Right.
and
That
guess
is
what? I'm not saying like I don't care if you have plastic surgery. Like
no, no, no.
it's whatever. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying like yeah, it is an interesting thing to focus your attention on when you're highly religious.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you don't watch Saturday Night Live, but there was this sketch they did a little while ago
Mhm.
making fun of the Stanley Cup girl.
Oh
And
yeah.
and they all had blonde hair. They all looked like they had plastic surgery. And then
Mhm.
they were all comparing their Stanley Cups and who could have the largest Stanley Cup and things like
Uh-huh.
that. And I
Yeah.
was like, what an interesting sort of like stereotype that Saturday Night Live has picked up on.
But turns
And
out it's true. Okay, but this is what the study found that I thought was interesting. Okay, the reason why it's all of these people in Draper, Utah, but I mean, there's lots of pockets of this all over
yeah.
Utah, but these 126 that they interviewed, it was highly Draper. They said that members in more diverse congregations, so that have more ethnic diversity, racial diversity, body shape diversity, members in those congregations reported feeling better about themselves. So if you're in a more
Uh-huh.
diverse group, you're less comparing yourself.
Oh.
So, in contrast, more homogeneous congregations reported more competition, more
Mhm.
conformity, and more pressure to look their best. And so
Mhm.
then those people view their bodies more negatively and they're more prone to go get plastic surgery to fit in with the everybody else that looks the same.
What a cool study. I'm going to say it's a big deal because
Yeah.
that's a very interesting study. And I do not want to move to Draper. Based on that, I don't think
Listen,
I would like
they're
it
good
there.
members of the church. These are
For
people who
sure.
serve, who are again highly religious. But this is
Yeah.
just like a little thing that is part of that culture that's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought one more part of the study was interesting because they asked them about how they view wearing garments.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So 30%, again, this is just 126 that they did these in-depth
Focus
interviews with.
groups.
30% viewed wearing the garment as negative to their body image.
Oh,
Yep.
that's too bad.
40% viewed the garments favorably, and 30%
Uh-huh.
were like, it's whatever.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting, huh?
So I'm just picturing in my mind these pioneer photos I see of women who've recently crossed the plains or who settled Utah,
Mhm.
and and I'm just thinking they're probably not happy with their their descendants who now are way into
Maybe.
these things
I mean,
because
I think
those women didn't even smile for pictures. They
that's
didn't.
true.
They maybe combed their hair, but they were not augmenting their bodies in any particular way or showing off any skin in those
Mm,
photos. They
yeah,
might not approve of if
they
they
were
were
sweaty and dirty, let's be honest.
to.
But
Right.
here's the thing, I really don't think we need to throw shade on this particular group of
Yeah.
saints, right?
No.
Like this is definitely something that has become important to them and
Yeah.
that they work hard for and that they spend money on. I just find it interesting that there's just this little subsect of culture
Yeah.
that is predominantly Mormon, that this is the focus, and it's really based around perfection, or at least looking and seeming the same as everybody around you.
I watched one episode of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and one of the women in that intro, she does something like this. She like puffs up lips or something. I can't remember what she does. But
Uh-huh.
she said, "Look, the pitch I make is the church teaches you need to be perfect, therefore your body should look perfect." And she's like, "And my
Interesting.
customers all agree with that idea."
Hmm.
And so it is just
Interesting.
interesting like the way that we present ourselves to the world can be maybe I never would have thought of that if I were to say
Right.
I'm from Draper, Utah, that people might be like, "Oh, do you have a Stanley Cup?" "Well, yes, I do."
I
And then they'd be
do.
like,
And I have
"I
a
know."
different one for every season. It has to be the right color.
And then they'd say, "I know all about you. I know
Pardon
your
me, Matt,
story."
while I take a quick drink from my Stanley.
Oh, you do have one. Okay.
Perfectly made. They're the best thing in the world.
Speaking of crazy things that happen in Draper. No, I don't know that this is actually Draper, but the
Okay.
Zach Wilson thing made me think of this made me think
Okay.
of the Zach Wilson thing. Okay.
Okay.
The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives
Oh.
chronicles swinging sex scandal in a new Hulu series. Big deal?
Oh.
Little deal? Or no deal? Three, two, one. No
Little
deal. Yeah.
deal. If
I mean,
Hulu's gonna do another show on Mormons, it's gonna
exactly.
get watched and it's gonna get a lot of attention. So I say
I
little
know.
deal, but
Right.
Tell
That's
me
what I say
more.
too. I say I'm so tired of Hulu making anti-Mormon stuff, right?
Listen,
Like
this is a catchy title, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
there are so many stories on this too, but apparently there was a swinging sex thing, right? Where people were like, I mean, listener, if you want to know more about this, I'm not going to say false things to make people upset. You're just going to have to follow the links and read about it because I don't know the details of it, but the headline says
So
it all.
I'm sorry to be me, but swinging, is that
Yeah.
like consensual adultery?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, swinging.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Swingers are like married people. In fact, my son was telling me like what you hang in your doorway if you want to let people know that you're a swinging couple. But
Oh,
yes, it's a way of saying we're married to each other, but we're open to sexual relations with other people. And
and we're
apparently,
members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. There was apparently a scandal
I
about
would
that.
watch this show.
Wait, because we watched the Murder Among the Mormons.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was a good show.
Yeah.
But that wasn't on
I
Hulu.
didn't watch Sister Wives. I haven't watched Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. But I mean, I would watch it because I'm interested in how they portray us, to be honest. And are these actual like faithful members, or is this just like I used to be a member of the church and now I do this? I'd watch it out of curiosity.
They're all going to say that they're members of the church until the end of the series where they're like, well, I haven't been to church in 5 years.
I see. Okay.
Because it's not a fun story to be like, this person's no longer a member of the church. It'll be like a follow up. Now, if you're wondering what so and so is doing now, they haven't been back to church
They've
since
been
before.
excommunicated. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, that was a great session of
Woo,
Big
big deal.
Deal, Little
Little
Deal,
deal.
No
No
Deal.
deal.
We're going to do This Week in Mormon History. I have a couple of really fun. All three of these are great stories.
Excellent.
They're not all long, but they're all great. Okay.
Okay.
165 years ago,
Whoa. Was the
18
church alive then?
the Mormons pioneers were crossing the plains.
Okay.
Okay. There was a 73-year-old woman. She wanders away from a handcart company and was not found despite a day-long search.
Oh, I know. She went to get plastic surgery and wanted to return with nobody knowing.
That detail's left out of the story.
Okay, I'm
Okay, but
sorry.
imagine you're 73 and crossing the plains with a
Yeah.
handcart company. So they spend all day looking for her. They can't find her. They move on without her, only to be amazed that on August 15th, 2 weeks later, she met them at a trading post west of Independence Rock.
Wow. So she just figured it out on her own and caught back up to them?
Isn't that so
How did
cool?
she have food and like protection and stuff?
That's the part of the story I don't know. I just know the story. Like,
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
But listener, you should Google Elizabeth Watson, if you want to know the rest of the
Emma
story.
Watson, you'd also find another interesting story. Okay.
Okay. 175 years ago.
Even farther ago, what was
It-
happening in the church now? Is the
okay.
prophet alive?
No, he's been killed 5 years after Joseph Smith was killed.
Okay.
And the church has moved to Utah. So 1849, the headquarters is in Utah.
Okay.
At a special conference in the Bowery on Temple Square, Hosea Stout and two companions are called to go to China as
Wow.
missionaries. They arrived in Hong Kong in April of 1853. They become ill from the oppressive heat and the unusual food. Their message falls on deaf ears. There is no response other than ridicule. And in 4 months, they return home.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they went all the way to Hong Kong. They had a terrible time,
Okay.
accomplished nothing, and came home.
Mm-hmm.
Bless their hearts.
Yeah.
That was a very Utah thing to say. Did you like it? Bless their hearts.
In the South, that means something much different. It's like a nice way to be mean to somebody.
Oh, not intended that way.
But
White flag, white flag.
this is a story you wouldn't hear in General Conference very often, right?
That's true. That is
Where they
true.
went to China on their missions and then came home 4 months later in defeat. But I think that it's important to share stories like this because that happens all the time. The mission to the Lamanites we read about in the Doctrine and Covenants didn't convert any Lamanites. Like,
Yeah.
so often you go on a mission to a people and it doesn't end up in the church being established and things like that. So that's what I
Okay.
wanted to share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good take. Good take. Okay.
Hey, this last one is just to make you feel old.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
20 years ago this week, David B. Haight dies.
Oh, that did make me feel old. 20 years?
Yeah.
I loved David B. Haight.
Yeah, he
My
was
memory
great.
of him is that he was very old, and
Yeah.
for a few conferences in a row, he didn't write down his talk. He just kind of went up to the mic and said what he wanted to say and
Yeah.
told some good stories. Yeah, 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 yeah.
This is an inside story from our mom, but
Okay.
apparently at the old tabernacle, because David B. Haight didn't like to time his talks, they had a little red light on the podium that would
Okay.
flash and let him know it's time for your talk to be over. And one time he was up there talking and the red light's flashing and he's not ending his talk, so they just keep flashing it more and more. And he just puts his hand over the red light so that it doesn't disturb him as he's finishing his talk.
Hey, I got things to say. I'm not going to be here much longer. You don't know.
He really gave great talks,
Yeah.
even though they were not at all like
So they
written
had to
or
wait until he was done and then hurry and type him up what he said and put it
yeah,
in the ensign? Huh.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
A
Yeah.
different time, huh?
Yeah. That's fun.
Just makes us feel old.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, so just want to remind listeners that we have an interview with Michael Cragen that's posted on YouTube right now, and it should show up in the podcast feed sometime soon. Michael Cragen works as a foreign service officer with the State Department, and it was a super fun interview that we did with him.
Yeah, he was very interesting. He had some really great takes on a lot of things. I especially remember him talking about women's issues and LGBT issues in the church, and having a foreign perspective on that was really interesting. So,
Yeah, it was fun. And of course, if you'd like to email us feedback, you can reach us at contact@thisweekinmormons.com.
we'd
You
love
can
to hear from
also
you.
you can also comment on our YouTube channel. We like to read those comments sometimes. I have a podcast called Real Mormonism, and you might not know this, Melissa, but Sean, Sam, and I are going to co-host. We're going to be special guest hosts of This Week in Mormons in 2 weeks' time.
Oh,
So
that'll be great. Everybody will love hearing the three of you together. I love your perspectives, and I think you guys are funny together. So good. That'll be fun.
yeah, thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
So also we want to encourage you to become a Patreon subscriber. Go to patreon.com/thisweekinmormons. You can unlock bonus episodes. You can unlock bonus content. And also you can just feel like you're one of our superstar listeners that contributes to the show.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a great week, everybody.